Icehouse Ventures has taken a page from Australia's Blackbird and established a code of conduct, an anonymous, secure channel for reporting incidents of bullying, harassment or other bad behaviour by those in the startup ecosystem. NBR's Dita De Boni spoke to Icehouse Ventures CEO Robbie Paul and asked him what had prompted the move.
Yeah, well, what prompted it was 2 weeks ago, we had an all-team offsite down in Christchurch, and that was also the first day of Lane's full-time employment as a venture partner of Icehouse Ventures. She joined after selling out of her company that we were an early investor in called Chatterize. And I had a very simple brief for Lane on that day for her speaking slot, which was to say, hey, you've been on the other side of the table. Now that you're in this sort of position of privilege and power in some respects, based on everything you've learned, how will you be the best VC, and how do you think we can be the best investor and supporter of Kiwi startups? And she did provide a lot of very constructive guidance beyond what prompted this, but she also shared pretty horrifying details about the experience that she had, and it just made us realize that New Zealand can do better, and that we have a part we can play in that. And so that a week later, we announced the code of conduct and the anonymous reporting platform, Wisply.
If it's not too sort of much to ask you, what kind of experiences is she talking about? I mean, the people that I've met from the startup eco sector seem very focused on their own thing. So I'm just interested to know what kind of experiences she was having.
Well, I think the point of rolling out this code of conduct and addressing some of the experiences that Lane had was just to say, like, let's just get a baseline set of expectations around how people should behave and what is unacceptable behavior, and secondly, help people as best we can realize that when they're in positions of power, be it an employer of employees or a potential investor or a director or an investment committee member or any number of roles that people play in the New Zealand venture ecosystem, that they should appreciate that that they have that power and act accordingly. So there's, I think. I'll leave it to Lane and everybody else to explain the experiences that they've had. But there's just behavior that doesn't need to take place, and that I think we can help address in New Zealand.
So when you say help address, you're talking about the people that would come through the Icehouse Ventures organisation, whether they be founders, whether they be investors or so forth. So this code of conduct will touch everyone who has anything to do with you, basically.
Well, we've put this out there, and we would love to see wider adoption across the whole ecosystem. And we've already talked to a number of parties about that. And we should acknowledge that a lot of what we're able to roll out quite quickly is because of the hard work and great work that Blackbird and StartMate had done in the Australian ecosystem. And to your question about who this relates to, initially it is related to our community. It just happens that our community is quite large, right? Like 300 companies that we funded and 2,000 investors. And that's by design, by the way. Like, we believe very strongly that a diverse and large community is best equipped to support Kiwi companies and help our mission of finding and investing in companies that can transform the future of New Zealand. And but that comes with challenges, right? When you have a large group. And so this is just one way to sort of set out some expectations and be very clear in what we expect from our community.
It's just, I suppose, that I would have expected that you would already be acting on tips about behaviour, or you would already have your ears to the ground about what people are doing in this system. So why the need for an actual formal code of conduct?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you're right that we have our ear to the ground, and that we act upon bad behavior and address it at board level, and have for a long time. The addition here is that we're clearer about expectations in the market. We outline, and I'd encourage anybody to go read on our website the code of conduct. We outline both the expectations and how we can respond to breaches of the code of conduct. But more importantly, and this was highlighted having been an investor in Lane's company for 3 years alongside a number of investors in New Zealand and from offshore. It was highlighted that having a platform like Wisply, which we've rolled out, does provide a different forum that was absent in the New Zealand ecosystem for people to speak up when they otherwise didn't feel comfortable doing so.
What is to stop that platform being misused by bad actors or people who want to seed disinformation? I mean, surely this is open to some kind of abuse potentially?
Well, we are aware of that, of the risk, and this is a starting point, and we do expect to evolve the platform. And one of the reasons why we're being so open about it and engaging the community about it is because we want feedback. And all we want to do is just try to set a precedent and play a small part in raising the bar on how people act in this ecosystem, right? We are not pretending like we are, the judge and jury of everything, nor do we have the right answer to every response. To your point about misuse, though, this is an internal tool, managed by our Code of Conduct Committee as well as the board. We don't publicize individual names or reports, and so it's not it's not sort of an anonymized platform where people can just spread misinformation publicly to everybody else.
I mean, in the startup community, you will know this better than I, the kind of people that pursue entrepreneurism can sometimes be unusual people who have unusual personality traits because they're so driven or they're seized by an idea and so forth. Is there a clear demarcation between bad behaviour and eccentric behaviour?
I'd say the Code of Conduct attempts to create a pretty clear guideline there, right? And I mean, we are like the number one fans of entrepreneurs, as well as anybody who's willing to invest in or support those entrepreneurs. And if anything, I would describe that subset of people as like some of the most important people that New Zealand could have, right? Because they are building new technology, creating new jobs, and trying to solve problems that not only New Zealand, but the whole world faces. And they have to put a lot on the line to become successful. And so all we want to do is just to make sure that every part of the, their journey is as smooth and as empowered as possible by trying to use our position in the market and influence others to address bad behavior, right? But there's a big difference between being a bully and being an eccentric entrepreneur who's very mission driven.
Is there proof out of Australia with Blackbird and others that this kind of system or these kind of safeguards actually lead to a better innovation ecosystem?
Well, I would say, even the feedback that we've received so far validates the benefit of having this code of conduct out there, and that having an anonymous reporting platform gives people a chance to speak when they otherwise wouldn't be able to. So already I would say there's positives. And, the other part that makes me feel really positive is the vast majority of people who have responded very positively to what we've rolled out. And so every ecosystem is going to have bad actors, but the good news is that the ones that rise to the top, that run huge companies, that make big investments, that run big venture firms, they can only get there by being aligned to a common cause and by being great actors consistently for a very long period of time.